the September 16th, 2013 meeting of the Plan Commission to order. Would we all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? Could we please have a roll call?
Sandra Stotney, Michael Dye, Ann Herbert,
Present.
Kathleen Hill,
Present.
William Hutton,
Present.
Michael Tinker,
Here.
Kim White. Here. Thomas White,
Here.
6 present, we have a quorum.
Madam President,
Yes?
I would just remind all the Plan Commission members and those in the audience that this meeting is being broadcast, and if everybody would speak into the microphone so all of the comments can be heard in the room as well as in the broadcast.
Thank you, Mr. Pullman. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes for August 19th, 2013. What's the pleasure?
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passed. Any old business to come before the board?
There is no old business.
Then we will move to new business. The first item on the agenda is CP-13-08, petition of Walmart Real Estate Business Trust, the Delaware Business Trust, for approval of a developmental plan in a C4 General Commercial District located at 7850 Cabela Drive within the city of Hammond. Have all notification requirements been met?
Yes, they have.
Right. Do we have anyone that would like to speak? Please state your name, address, and sign in, please. And if there's two of you, if you're going to be switching back and forth, if you would both do the same thing.
Good evening. My name is Bernessa McQueen. I'm with Manhard Consulting. We are the civil engineers for Walmart for this project. As you may remember, we were here last month with the plat of re-subdivision for the property, and we've been before a redevelopment commission for the site plan and building review also. The site is the Cabela site at the intersection of 8094 and Indianapolis Boulevard. The proposed Walmart will be a little bit south of the Cabela's and next to the Cabela's, as you can see here. We have two proposed driveways off of Cabela Drive. So as you come off of Indianapolis Boulevard and turn onto Cabela Drive as you're heading towards Cabela's, we would have two new driveways, which would be full access points. One that leads into a southern ring road type of driveway and one that leads directly into the parking lot. The parking lot, as you can see, is 60-degree angled parking. There's approximately 857 parking spaces for a 4.5 spaces per 1,000 square foot ratio. The southern driveway, as I mentioned, is kind of a ring road type of thing. The southern driveway will also provide access to the lots further to the south. With the re-subdivision, we took this one big lot that Cabela's had originally subdivided and created a lot for Walmart and then a remainder lot that will be at some point redeveloped when Cabela's finds another user for that property. So this southern drive is being utilized for cross-access to that future development piece also. If you recall from the subdivision plat, we were limiting the access in the first 150 feet off the street, and then they can connect at any point after that. It's also limited in the back corner due to the truck access and the grade change back there. The existing detention basin, which is kind of off the page here in the corner, that was built by Cabela's. If you've been out there, you see the big, huge detention basin. It was sized for the entire Cabela's property. So our site drainage will drain into the existing basin. The building, as you can see, is approximately 187,000 square feet, is what Walmart considers a supercenter type store. So it includes general merchandise, grocery, and liquor sales. There is a garden center at the north end, a TLE at the north end. So TLE is Tire Lube Express, so where you go in and get your tires changed while you're shopping. And then on the south end, there's a pharmacy drive-through. So it's very similar to the store in Robertsdale that was built a few years ago, with the exception of that store doesn't have a pharmacy drive-through. So that will be a little bit different. On the back side of the building, we've got 2 truck docks opposing each other, as well as a compactor area and an area for dumpsters and bale and pallet storage for recycling. We have 2 proposed signs. One is out at the intersection of Cabela Drive and Indianapolis Boulevard, and it would be a shared monument sign that has a panel for Cabela's, a panel for Walmart, and then a panel for future development. And then we have a monument sign proposed with the Walmart site that is just a standalone Walmart monument sign. The shared monument sign with the multi-tenants, multi-panels, that sign exceeds code allowed 20 feet height. So we will be appearing before BZA next week requesting a variance for 30-foot height there on that sign. The other thing that we are requesting a variance for and will be before BZA next week is for our garden center area. And Jeff can go into more detail on the building side of things, but our fencing there is above the code limit of 8. Code limit 8? 6 or 8? 6. So we are up, our fencing goes up to 16 feet around the garden center. As I previously mentioned, the site drains to the existing detention basin, but we are doing a little bit of grading here in that we are elevating the building up above the former floodplain elevation, similar to what Cabela's did when they built their store. So we're raising the grade in the area of the building around 6 or 7 feet to elevate the building. As a result, in order to accomplish that, this area north of the store, behind the store, will be excavated, and that soil excavated out of this area that we're calling a borrow area will be used to fill in the area of the building. In the Cabela's portion of the triangle, that borrow area that's dug out will be refilled with topsoil back into within 2 feet of existing grade. On the Walmart property, the area that's dug out will remain low. That will be drained by a pipe connection to the existing detention basin. So if there is standing water in that low area, it will ultimately drain out to the detention basin. All of the, you have in your packets a grading plan, a utility plan. I didn't mount all of those, but you'll see on the utility plan, all of our utilities are coming from either Cabela Drive or from Northcott. We're extending water main from Cabela Drive through the site over to Northcott. The parking lot lighting that is proposed is LED lighting, which is a little also different from the North store. Newer design there, more energy efficient design with the LED lights. And then this mounting is of the landscape plan, which you also have in your packets. As you can see around the backside of the TLE and the loading dock area, we've planted, or we're proposing to plant, a significant amount of evergreen trees, and that was with the intent of buffering these uses from the residential area on Northcott. And in addition, we've proposed a whole row of trees along the bike path and the levee. The bike path and the levee berm will remain as is today. And the trees that we've planted along the levee are on the downstream side of the levee slope, so they'll actually be lower than the levee. So we've planted trees that once they grow to full maturity, their canopy will be higher, and so they will actually serve as a visual buffer and not be blocked by the berm itself. The fence around the borrow area has been upgraded at the request of staff from a chain link fence to a black metal ornamental fence. So we've tried, and Jeff can speak more to it, but we've tried to significantly buffer the site from the Northcott residents. With that, I'll turn it over to Jeff. Let's read.
Good evening. I'm Jeff Suchan with Lockington Architects, architect working with Walmart on this project here. As you can see from the elevations
Can you sign
and
in, please, before we forget?
I got it signed in.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. As you can see from the elevations here, and we've got two rendered perspectives that indicate what the building is going to look like. Working with staff on really trying to create an upgraded appearance for the Walmart, utilizing a lot of different materials, a lot of masonry materials, and we've got some samples down here also. The primary material being a quick brick, a brick-looking material that encompasses most of the front facade, alternated with some painted CMU, some ephes accents to really dress up the building. Varied parapet heights to kind of break up the front and side facades so that it doesn't have the impression of being 180,000 square feet. Kind of working around the building, we've got two entries, both very encased with glass that create kind of a beacon of light, kind of welcoming. And with signage, we're able to identify the one side being for the market side, the other side being for the home and pharmacy side. As Bernessa described, we've got an auto center, we've got the garden center where we do have the ornamental fence with the screening, the same material that was used up at the Robertsdale store, creating able to screen the garden center some so it's not as visible. So then working around the corner garden center and then around to the auto center, the pharmacy drive-throughs accented with some ephes accents. And like I said, the two renderings over there really kind of show what the final building's going to look like. That's all I've got.
Madam President,
Yes,
I think if we could take a moment or two for the petitioners to hold the board so the camera can show that to the audience at home. And I want to point out a couple points.
would you like to show the audience also?
Just a few comments about the elevations. This project did go before the Redevelopment Commission. There was a lot of discussion about the architectural treatment. This is probably, I don't know, maybe the fourth or fifth version of the elevations. One of the points that we discussed at the Redevelopment Commission level was which facades were the most important. And we determined that the eastern facade, which faces the boulevard, and the southern facade, which as you enter the property from Cabela Drive and make that curve, you would really see those two facades, the corner of that. And we thought those were the two most important facades to ask for the upgrade in the quality of materials. Not that the other sides, I don't want to imply that the other sides are not important, but those clearly were the two most important facades where the quick brick material and the ephes combination were important for making the building look as good as it can be.
So that would be the front elevation and
And the left side.
the left?
Yeah, it's the top one
That one,
and the bottom one.
yeah. And you can also kind of see that in the rendered perspectives. We've kind of taken images from the front left and the front right to kind of show what it's going to look like there.
The north facade is going to be hidden really by the fencing for that outdoor storage area. So that's one reason why we weren't concerned about the quality, lesser concerned about the quality of the materials. And the rear facade, that's where a lot of the landscaping comes in, where that would help hide or block that elevation from the Northcott residence.
Any commissioner comments, questions? Mr. Hudden?
Thank you. What a great presentation and what a great addition to the city of Hammond. Thank you very much. We appreciate all your efforts. I do have a couple of questions. I see in the southwest corner of the property, there's a new retaining wall. And I'm not sure I'm clear on the extent of that retaining wall. Could you give us a little more explanation?
Yes, feel that. Oh, that works. I can do that. So the retaining wall at the south corner goes from, it's not shown on this plan, so forgive me, but it's roughly this location and wraps around here. It's really just in the area where the property line and the curb line are close together, because we can't make the grading transition work there to the existing detention basin. So once you get around to where it starts to spread out a little bit more, there's no retaining wall.
Do you know what the elevation of the top of that wall is?
I believe we're at about a 6-foot maximum height.
Top of the
Oh, what the top of the actual elevation is? Just a second.
Relative to the floor.
Should be down about 1.5 to 2 below the floor elevation. Yeah, it's about 2 feet below the finished floor elevation of the building.
And I'm sure you probably looked at this, my last question. I'm sure you looked at this. You're probably running 300 or 400 feet of pipe. Do you know what that invert elevation is going to be at the discharge point?
Where the storm sewer discharges to the basin, we will be at the basin's existing normal water line. So I believe that's 591, I believe is the normal water line of the existing basin.
I guess my concern is I just don't want that area to fill up with water and then have that water back up and then end up in the parking lot. But just a point.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
I'm sorry, one last question. I couldn't go. I just couldn't. I had to. The parking stalls, Brian, are the correct size?
Yes, that we are allowing them to do the 9.5 by 19, which is one of the options available in those, in the zoning ordinance. We made that change last year.
9.5 by 19? Maybe you can look at that again and make sure that that's correct on their drawings.
Okay, I will double check the work of Manhart. As far as a comment about the access drive on the south side, you're showing landscaping all the way through that area, and we don't know exactly where the connecting drive is going to be at this point. So obviously, some landscaping will be removed at one point or another in order to accommodate that driveway.
Correct. Somewhere in this stretch, when the Lot 2 redevelopment or Lot 2 development plan is determined, wherever they decide to put their driveway, they might have to take out a tree, maybe 2, depending on how wide it is.
Another comment, just so everybody is aware of it, is there is also a connecting drive that goes into the Cabela's parking lot. And that is just something that, you know, anytime you deal with a large retail area, you want to have an alternative way for the traffic to flow rather than forcing them out always into the street. So that it's, in essence, a cross-access drive.
Any other questions? I have a question in regard to, as far as you mentioned, trees on the levee that would be planted.
Yes.
Living in a former floodplain, that was one thing that they insisted were removed, were any trees. Has that been checked out?
The trees will be planted far enough away from the levee, so they won't in any way impact the integrity of the levee.
Right, yeah, I mean, 'cause the trees that are shown there are on their property. The levee structure, I'm trying to remember exactly, but it's about 30 feet from there? The
Correct.
toe of the levee?
Correct. It's about 30 feet from away from the Walmart property line.
Okay. Brian, you've also checked that out too to make sure there's no problem?
Right, yeah, yes, we are aware of that, and that was why we directed them to keep the landscaping on their property. Well, one of the reasons, but yeah. Just, I know with, unfortunately, Mr. Dostotny is not here tonight, and, you know, there was a lot of discussion about the Borough area and the review by the consultant for the sanitary district, and just for the record, if you could just make a few comments about that.
Certainly. So the Borough area, which is, I'll describe it on the Walmart property, because the portion on the Cabela's property is going to be refilled in, so it won't be left low-lying. The portion on the Walmart property will be down 9 or so feet from the Walmart finished floor. So it'll be a low, it will look like a detention basin. It's not designed to be a detention basin, but for visual purposes, it will look like a detention basin. Stan was concerned about this area holding water and whether that would cause any problems for the site and the development and neighbors and everything. So what we're going to do is put in a storm sewer pipe, a release pipe for this low area at the property line that adjoins the existing detention basin. So that way, if water does collect in this low area, it has a way to drain out and go to the detention basin. With this pipe that we're putting in, it will essentially make this low area additional detention storage. It's going to act as an equalizer pipe. So in the event that there was a major rainfall event, the detention basin could actually back up into this newly created low area.
On that site plan, could you clarify where the ornamental fence is going to be?
Yes, the ornamental fence wraps around the low area, kind of completely encompasses the low area.
Okay, and it will go onto the Cabela's side of the property?
Yes.
Sure, I mean,
Since we changed it to fill back in, I didn't reconsider removing it from there.
okay, I wanted to clarify. Thank you.
How high will that fence be?
6 feet.
So you're going to have the trees and then the fence?
Correct. Correct. But the fence is a metal ornamental fence, so there's probably 4 inches between pickets, and the pickets are real thin, so it's not opaque in any way. You see right through the fence.
Yeah, a lot of it is because of the concerns of a depressed area. It's a safety requirement, as well as keeping out people that shouldn't be in there. The thing that, and this is somewhat important, is somewhat tongue-in-cheek, but please make sure that there is a gate
Yes, for
put
maintenance.
into it for maintenance.
I don't think that this plan depicts one, but on our construction documents, it will show a gate.
Yeah, there were some concerns at the Robertsdale site that there wasn't a gate to get in to
Oh.
clean out the debris that would potentially end up in there. So that is somewhat of a serious
Yes.
comment.
I know this sign is not up for tonight's discussion, but where would the site on the property there be? There will be a Walmart sign on that property, correct?
Yes. It's not shown on this piece of it. It is right here in this corner. So that's the standalone sign.
Yeah, I mean, it is important to, and just to clarify that point, the sign package that's presented in the development, in this material, is a part of the development plan. So the Plan Commission is reviewing all of the signs. What is subject to the BZA is the variance on the height for the sign that is closer to the intersection with Indianapolis. So you are
Okay, so this is the low sign then, correct?
The low sign will be right here. The taller sign will be at the southwest corner of Indianapolis Boulevard and Cabela Drive where they intersect. So you know where the big overhead sign is as you go into Cabela Drive? The big, what is that truss structure that goes across?
well, whatever NDOT requires.
Yeah, whatever the NDOT signage that goes across Cabela Drive, it'll be right around where that structure is, but on the south side of Cabela Drive.
And that sign is supposed to be able to be at the height so it can be seen by from the expressway and everything? Or
Not from the expressway. It's intended for people traveling north-south on Indianapolis Boulevard. And as you come off the expressway, where you'd be, if you were coming from the north on Indianapolis Boulevard and you've got to get across the 3 lanes there, it's intended to direct travelers north and south on Indy.
a tasteful sign without lights or anything like that? Just
It would be internally illuminated.
Some of the things that some of the things that we had talked about, I want to also get on the record, is the question of wetlands on the property and what steps you have done to address that. In the plat portion, we talked about that there was a ditch that crossed through this property that had an easement on it, and that the sanitary district released the easement, so what's happening to the ditch? So any of those types of things, if you could just address that.
Sure. So there is an existing ditch. When Cabela's constructed their store and built Cabela Drive, there's an existing low area on the east side of Cabela Drive, and so they put a culvert under Cabela Drive, and then that drains via a ditch back to the existing detention basin. That ditch bisects the property and is essentially right through the middle of the building. So we will be filling that ditch in, which is why we needed to vacate the easement with the plat. We are rerouting that ditch in storm sewer in pipe, and it will run along the frontage, the Cabela Drive frontage, and then along the south property line back to the detention basin. So basically just rerouting it around the south side of the property. There was concern that the ditch, as well as some other low-lying spots on the property, would be considered wetlands. We applied to the Army Corps of Engineers for a jurisdictional determination, and they responded that they are not taking jurisdiction over any of the low-lying areas, so there are no regulated wetlands on the site. Same with the Indiana Department of Environmental Management. We then, once we received the Corps jurisdiction, we submitted to IDEM, and IDEM concurred that they are not taking jurisdiction over the low-lying areas or the ditch. So we have no regulated wetlands on the property.
The ditch, there is the question of the ditch being in the floodplain and FEMA, DNR.
Yes, the ditch is in floodplain, so just this, there's a little strip of floodplain that remained on the property once the maps were amended from the Cabela development. So we will need to amend the map again to remove that little strip from floodplain. So we will submit for a letter of map revision after construction is complete, request a letter of map revision to remove that portion of the floodplain from the property.
anything else? Brian, do you have anything else?
Just to point out that the whole discussion, whole discussion regarding the wetlands, Vanessa did submit a summary memo and that was in your packet. That was, it's right after the staff report, and so she just verbalized what this memo stated.
Right, we are ready to open the public hearing period. If anybody would like to come before us and speak for or against the petition, please come forward, and you need to state your name and address and sign in, please.
Hi, my name is Joe Galoli. I'm a resident on Northcott. I'm a little concerned about the removal of the natural drainage area that the property is going to take over. And there's a lot of talk about redirecting that water into the retention pond. Well, we still get water in the back of our properties on Northcott whenever we get a heavy rain. I'm really concerned about that additional water being directed into that reservoir area that already leads back. There's a spillway that leads back to the other side of the berm, the west side of the berm, and that fills the entire that fence line of Cabela's as it is now. I'm concerned about that. I'm concerned about a lot of the additional traffic that we're going to get. The Robertsville area, I've got friends that live there, and there's been a tremendous amount of people walking around through the streets, a lot of debris, a lot of problems that they've encountered. And this is an even bigger store. A lot of the neighbors on Northcott, there's only a few of us, but we're really concerned. Our properties have already gone down in the past few years a great deal. Our taxes have gone up, and what's going to happen now? Business is nice. It's nice to bring the more money and more tax dollars into the community, but what about the people that have been here for a long time and have supported Hammond paying their taxes, being law-abiding, and now it's not looking real good for us.
Sir, can you state your address and sign in for me, please?
Pardon me?
Can you state your address and sign in for me also?
It's 7835 Northcott.
Thank you.
Did you get the spelling of his name?
The lights from the entrance off of Indianapolis Boulevard shine right into our house now. We're concerned about the 30-foot high, the landscaping area fence that they're talking about putting in. I guess it's next week. That's another meeting. They're asking for a variance. It's creating an eyesore for the people that live along that fence line now. I just don't think it's fair.
Thank you.
Just a comment, the next week, Wednesday, the Board of Zoning Appeals is going to review the sign, the height of the sign, and just for clarity purposes, that sign is located at Indianapolis Boulevard, so it's on the opposite side of the property from the residences. The fence question is on the north side of the building, and I don't remember exactly how much it sticks out from the building, but it's for their caged area or their storage area, so it's right at the building. The other fence, the 6-foot fence, is the one that's closest to the residences on Northcott. So I just wanted to clarify where we're talking about, what our fence is and where the signs are. So I hope that helped.
It'd help if we saw some maps or some drawings that we could look at and see just how it affects our property. There's a lot of the neighbors, and I hope I can get some of them down here next week.
Okay.
Because this is a serious issue for us.
Yeah, and I think and I don't know if the camera caught that, but the question was being more of asking for more diagrams or to show all this stuff. So I would just ask the petitioners for next week to think about other ways of making sure that information is demonstrated clearly.
Anyone else?
Yes, my name is David Johnson, and I too live on Northcott, and my property looks directly over the retention pond.
You want to give your address, please?
7949 Northcott. And I was concerned about what elevation the building itself was going to be at, and I was also concerned about how high the store would be after it was built. I also would like to know when the project is estimated to be started and completed. And on this diagram here, it shows that it's probably about 60 feet from the bike trail, but I too would like to know how this would be real-life impact on location of the houses and real-life distances from the river, et cetera, et cetera. Those aren't really depicted on this unless I'm not reading it correctly. And I too would like to see, this is the first time I've seen this project. I wasn't able to make the first meeting, and I really didn't come with a lot of prepared questions, but these are some of the things that I'm thinking about. And also, if the retention pond was built to take care of the property as Cabela's had purchased it, a lot of that water that is runoff or from Cabela's is probably absorbed by the vegetation that's on there currently, but all that vegetation is going to be gone. So that water's got to go someplace, and it looks like it's going to come towards Northcott. So those are some of my concerns, and yeah, I'd like to see more information, and I can come up with maybe some better directed questions. Thank you.
Anyone else? Anyone else? Anyone else? Hearing none. We will go, close this period and allow the petitioners to come forward and answer the questions presented.
To address the most recent question, so the finished floor elevation is 601. That's the ground elevation at the doors at the entry points of the building. That is the same as Cabela's finished floor elevation. So the entry points of the building will be at the same elevation as Cabela's. The building height is about 30 feet on average. The parapet walls vary in height from 28 to 34, roughly, with the main walls being around 30 feet. I believe Cabela's is 42, 40, somewhere in the, I think Cabela's was closer to
They
the
also have,
40-foot range.
Yeah, and they have a higher part that's like about 70
So
feet or something like that.
for frame of reference as to how high the building will be and what the building will look like, the bottom of the building is the same elevation, goes up to about 30 feet as compared to 40 feet or so for the Cabela's building. The construction schedule, if approved, would be starting construction most likely in the spring of 2014 and about a year for construction.
When you say starting in 2014, is that groundwork, or are you talking about groundwork in the fall?
We're talking about groundwork in the fall. So potentially starting this fall with site construction and then building construction in spring of 2014. That is still being worked out as far as the construction schedule goes. The view from the residential, we submitted several renderings, and I forget if that was part of the redevelopment commission submittal.
Yes, it was.
Yes, it was. Are they still available for public viewing?
Yes, they are.
Okay, so we submitted several renderings that Jeff and his firm prepared that were 3D sort of views from the rear yards of some of the residential properties. So those are available for public viewing with staff, with you, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And then distance from river, I'll have to provide something that shows that. The detention was designed for assuming the entire site is built out commercial. So I believe it is assumed an 85% impervious ratio. So it's right now, with the site being fully vegetated, it is underutilized for what it was designed for. And to address the discussion on flooding for the backyards and redirecting the drainage, the levee serves as sort of a drainage divide between the entire Cabela's property and the Northcott drainage. So the levee, as we discussed, is roughly 30 feet or so east or west of the property line. The drainage from the levee in the backyards, the drainage from the slope of the levee in the backyards, I believe mixes in together. But the remainder of the site on the east side of the levee all drains to the detention basin and does not go towards the backyards of the houses at all. So the rerouting of the existing drainage ditch on site should have no effect on any other adjoining properties.
So just to reiterate that, the levee structure would act as a dam, perhaps, that would stop any of the surface water from going to the residents.
Correct.
So, and I think what you said is that potentially what they're experiencing in the backyards is the drainage that comes off that half of the slope that
Correct.
faces them.
Correct.
And so then it would naturally collect before it gets absorbed into the ground.
Correct. I don't recall seeing plans that showed storm sewer back there.
Right.
There's also a spillway from the retention pond to the other side of the levee. It comes through that berm. It comes through that berm. That's what I'm talking about. When you're dumping all that water from that 185,000 square foot building into the retention pond, it's going to wind up coming up on the other side of the berm.
And it's not just water off the back of the berm, it's also the water in the ground. It's the ground level of the water table. And that's why they're building the building up, to get above that water table.
Yeah, our city engineer has looked at it. Unfortunately, he's not here tonight to better answer your questions than I can. But I know that when we were discussing this project at the redevelopment commission level, we were asking these questions as to what the potential impact would be on the Northcott residences. We wanted to make sure that they're, they wouldn't make it any worse than it is, I guess, is a way of wording it. But with, again, I'm going to just characterize the way I understand it, but with all the studies that we've looked at, with is it the sanitary district consultant, I always forget their name, is it Donahue?
Donahue, yep.
Donahue.
Mm-hmm.
They looked at all of that, and they've indicated that this is designed in such a way where it should not make the current situation worse.
What's our recourse if it doesn't? And the Army Corps of Engineers in the past, I think, 3 months has just lifted our homes out of the floodplain area. Not all. Well, most of them.
Basically, what these gentlemen have said, even without this building being built in the future, the next 6 months to a year, they're still saying they still have problems with water draining onto their property.
That's
so
correct.
then when you start putting blacktop and buildings on an area that is still going into their property as far as drainage, this is their concern.
That building is a tremendous footprint to eliminate natural drainage. And that's not going to be there any longer once the property is built.
Has Mr. Destotny, I'm sorry he is not here tonight also, has he examined that? Has he received complaints from the Northcott people that there is still water coming onto their property with even just Cabela's? Have they looked at that? It's all right to see all these blueprints and all, yes, it should not happen, but if it still is happening now without a building there, I think this is what these people are concerned about.
Yeah, and I can't, speak for Mr. Destotny as to what has been reviewed or discussed for the backyards of Northcott. All I can say is that he's reviewed the design of this development, and he has indicated that it meets all of the requirements and that it should not make the current situation worse. And that's really all I can say without me speculating as to, into areas that I have no technical knowledge in. So I am sure that we can obviously discuss it with Mr. Dostotny to make sure that, have him double check everything to make sure that that all these issues that have been brought to our attention, we can address that to him and see what his response is.
Do you have any other comments to make for the people who have expressed their concerns?
I
Regretted I closed public expression before I had the right to, so if there's anyone else.
No, actually, you did it correctly.
Okay, well, I'm looking at my sheet and it says now I should be. All right. So now we have any questions again from the commissioners?
Madam President,
Yes.
Brian, you're going to talk to Mr. Dostotny about this again?
Yes, I will.
Okay.
Could this be put in as far as a contingency?
I have already amended my staff report to address that.
Okay, thank you.
What is the top of the existing levee elevation? Is it 602?
Yes, 602.
Okay, so to help the audience, what they're saying is that the top of the existing levee is 1 foot above the finished floor of the new Walmart and 1 foot above the finished floor at Cabela's. Just to give you a sense of scale.
Are we talking about the levee by the river or the levee behind Northcott?
The one on Northcott, is that correct? Sorry,
That's okay. That is correct.
that's correct. And then you were talking about this other area on the west and the northwest side of the new building going along Northcott, which appears to be a borrow pit or a depression of some sort that you might be able to use as a backup retention or detention pond?
Correct.
Okay, can you tell us the bottom of that elevation?
Right now, it is designed on the
Is it
plans.
587?
Right, 587 is what you have on the plans before you.
So to give you a sense, from 602 to 587 is 15 feet? So they have the bottom of this thing between you and the building, they have this depression of 15 feet, this large area. And I'm more than welcome to sit with you after the meeting and show you, maybe you can help me with this. We can show you where that all is to try to.
Well, sure. Like I said, this is the first time I've been to a meeting and I haven't seen any of the plans other than just to scan the board for a few seconds.
Right.
There's been a lot of money spent on certified mail to let us know about the meetings, but nobody's ever included a rendering.
I guess I would add that all of the plans that have been submitted are available at City Hall for viewing at any time.
Actually, at 649 Conkey.
Sorry,
But
at
that-
Planning Department.
That is referenced in the letter that you could have come to our office and looked at the plans before the meeting. That it was an open invitation at that point.
The other question I have, I think Mr. Johnson asked a question about how tall the building was going to be, and you thought it was 30 feet. Could you show us where that is? Because I'm not seeing it. Maybe I don't understand well.
Well, and actually, it's actually a little bit lower though.
Thank you.
Than what you was saying.
right.
At the sides here, we are only 20'8" to the top of the masonry here with minimal step ups.
Could you show Mr. Johnson what, on his side, which will be the second elevation?
Along the back.
Yeah.
And maximum height here is 24 foot 8 inches above finished floor.
And will the AC and heating units be on the roof, or will they be on the ground?
There will be units up on the roof, yes.
So the elevation will be another, probably 6 or 8
Another
feet
6 feet above that.
Well, we try to concentrate the units towards the center of the building so they're less visible. From an angle view, it would not be as visible.
I appreciate the fact that you're trying to answer their questions. However, you're supposed to be discussing that with the Plan Commission, and as well as we have an audience at home, and so if you could summarize that conversation.
Brian, that's my fault. I invited Mr. Johnson to come up and look at it so he would understand it, that's all.
Yeah, but just the whole issue about the height and then the AC units.
Right, yeah, just to summarize there, we were talking, the rear of the building, the maximum height of the wall is 24 foot 8 inches. There will be units, mechanical units up on the rooftop that we do try to concentrate more towards the center of the building, so they're not as visible around the property.
So basically, as a sight line from perspective, you would not really see them because of, if you're in the Northcott backyard, because of the sight lines, you should not be able to see the units.
I would have to get a specific.
Minimally see the units.
Right. With all the landscaping and all the other stuff, we've tried to obstruct the building from that angle.
But there might be an exhaust fan or something closer to the edge of the building.
Correct.
That might be seen.
Correct.
Okay.
And the landscaping with the trees will only be hiding that during the seasons where the trees are in bloom, and when
Yes.
the trees hit that height also.
Right. Oh, I lost you.
There's a combination of evergreen and deciduous trees. The trees that are being planted along the levee are all deciduous trees, but the trees that are being planted closest to the building are a mixture of evergreens and a majority of evergreens for the purpose of attempting to screen the loading dock and the Tire Lube Express area year-round.
But they're not going to be 10 to 15, 20 feet high to begin with.
When they are planted, no.
Yeah, and that's just normal. It is going to take a while for the plants to reach their maturity height.
All right. Any other questions? Staff report?
Yes, I think most of the issues that I described in the background of the staff report have been discussed at one point or another during all the presentation. So I will just,
Before you start, can you explain the Soil and Conservation District for Rule Number 5?
yeah, the Soil and Conservation District has jurisdiction over, it's really for erosion control, but that's what Rule 5 is for, erosion control. So anytime you disturb any site that is greater than 1 acre, they have to submit their plans for review to the Soil and Conservation District, and that is something that is normally required before an improvement location permit is issued.
So that it still has not been done yet.
Right, it wouldn't be done at this time anyway. It's more of a permitting question.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, so just getting, as I said, I'll just jump to the staff recommendation. Overall, the development plan for the Walmart is in compliance with the applicable regulations, except as noted below. The development plan has received review and approval from the Redevelopment Commission and the various departments. Staff recommends for granting of preliminary and final approval to the development plan contingent upon, number 1, the BZA approval of the necessary development variances or developmental variances. 2, the applicable approvals of FEMA and Indiana Department of Natural Resources in regards to the filling in of the drainage ditch. 3, approval of the Soil and Conservation District for Rule 5. 4, that the new materials in the Cabello Barrow area meeting the applicable local and state regulations, and that the area is filled to within 2 feet of its current elevation. And then I'm going to add number 5, subject to the technical review of issues, drainage issues, and all other issues related to the engineering department and any other applicable city departments. If the Plan Commission agrees that this report should be adopted as preliminary, if the Planning Commission agrees, then this report should be adopted as preliminary findings of fact.
Anything that the commissioners would like to discuss at this time?
I would, Madam President. Brian, I'd like to go back to that item number 4. The existing elevation right now is 600 in that borough area. And I was under the impression that the bottom of that new area is going to be 587.
The distinction here is they're excavating on the Cabela's property, and that portion will be restored, filled back in to within 2 feet.
I stand corrected.
Yeah, the portion
I'm sorry.
on Walmart will be at the 587.
I got it. Yep, my fault.
Since you made a change, do we have to go back to a public hearing, or are we all right with that? Okay, all right. All right, do we have any motions at this time? Anybody like to make a motion to accept the staff report as amended as preliminary findings of fact?
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. We have a motion and a second to approve the staff report or accept the staff report and its amendments as findings of fact. We have a roll call vote?
Ann Herbert,
Yes.
Kathleen Hill,
Yes?
William Hutton.
Yes.
Michael Tinker.
Yes.
Kim White.
Yes.
Thomas White.
Yes.
5 ayes, 0 nays, motion passed.
All right, we have as far as, we need a motion now in regard to approval of the developmental plan, or what we are going to do in regard to the developmental plan. Do we have a motion?
I make a motion as stated.
Pardon?
I'll make the motion that we accept the developmental plan.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Madam President, if I could ask that the motion be clarified by saying preliminary and final approval of the development plan contingent upon the 5 items identified in the staff report.
Would you like to amend that motion?
Yes, I would.
Okay. Second, willing to second? the
Certainly.
amendment?
Certainly.
Have a roll call vote, please?
Ann Herbert,
Yes.
Kathleen Hill.
Yes?
William Hutton.
Yes.
Michael Tinker.
Yes.
Kim White.
Yes.
Thomas White.
Yes.
6 ayes, 0 nays, motion passed.
Do we need anything else, Mr. Bowen?
No, you do not.
And audience has received information in regarding that this will come to the BZA next week, correct?
Yes, and the notifications to the BZA should be out already, or shortly. Yeah, they should be out. Did you get your notification to the BZA meeting? No.
There's a meeting next Monday?
Next Wednesday? Is it?
That's Wednesday at 6 p.m.
They would have been, Vanessa, do you know when you put those in the mail?
Thursday last week.
Thursday last week. Okay. So they, depending upon your postal, your delivery guy. So they are certified mail, so just as you know that.
Next item is CP-13-09, petition of Two Sing Inc. and Indiana Corporation to reclassify property at 3843 169th Street from a R1 Single Family Residential District to a C4 General Commercial District located within the city of Hammond. Has all notification requirements been met?
Yes, they have.
Right, we have a petitioner apparently right before us right now who would like to state his name and...
Good evening, Madam President, Commissioners, Director Poland, Attorney Kramer. Nice to see you all again. I'm Chris Fox, representing Two Sing Inc. at 2843 169th Street. And before I begin with that, I'd like to thank you for all your time and hard work with assisting with the replatting of West Point into Hune Street, and to let you know if you haven't heard yet, but the transaction for the sale of the land did close today at 2:30. So Munster Steel construction is going to commence any day, and they hope to be completed within 9 months for Munster Steel to move in. So on behalf of the Urban Enterprise Association, Pat Reardon and myself personally, I thank you. I've been working on that subdivision off and on since 1998, and it was a wonderful thing to happen today. And this evening, I'm here to ask for your assistance again on behalf of Two Sing Inc. because this, years ago, there was a Little Hudson gas station built. It's been there almost 40 years now. And there's a plat that was drawn by Stuart Allen that shows you the location, which I've included in my package. It's at 169th in Arizona. And as Director Poland's recommendation letter indicated, at one point when that was built, it was in a general commercial district, a GB. And that was in the 70s, and as you recall, at least I recall, oftentimes we went to the automobile fueling station simply for fuel. So as you can see from the Plata survey, we have about a 1,000 square foot square block building to service customers. Since that time, when the new zoning ordinance was passed, it was flipped to an R1. So it's been lawful non-conforming. Now, the parties involved with the operation, the gentleman sitting here, Alex, who's been working there since '95, they have about 900 to 1,100 customers come in every day. And they're ready to expand to assist in servicing their customers better with the convenience store aspect. The pump station will remain the same. There's currently 3 pumps servicing 6 valves. However, they want to increase the convenience store by about 800 feet and include a new cooler. And to do that, we're here to request the first step, that there be a favorable recommendation by the commissioners to the Common Council to pass an ordinance rezoning the property back to what's now C4 General Commercial District. Back in the 70s, it was GB General Commercial. So that's the first step. And today, I received the preliminary site plan to assist you, which is this larger piece, which is still in the works. And ideally, well, obviously, we will be discussing in detail more with Director Poland, City Engineer, Mr. Dostotny, and also the Zoning Administrator, Mr. Novak, in regards to meeting as many requirements as we can so that we can minimize the number of variances we'll need. The smaller drawing that I provided was an initial one in your package. This larger one shows the start of what they want to do one of the most beneficial changes, and I guess I can show this to the audience. They went in this nice new masonry wall, because that's another thing too. Director Pullen was kind enough to provide me with an updated map, which I included this evening. The original map I provided was from the older book, and it indicated that there was R1 directly west of this property. Actually, it's now C1. But regardless, they plan to put the masonry wall up to help with the privacy with the residential in the back, to improve the value, maintain the value of the residential area. We'll also, there's green space here, and this may be delineated better with our final plans before the BZA, as requested by Director Poland, Mr. Novak, Mr. Dostopny. But you can see the convenience store, they're looking at 800 additional square feet, which is 80% larger than the currently 1,000 square feet. And then with the walk-in cooler, ideally with that additional square footage, that will allow for not only additional patrons, but they plan to hire at least two full-time new employees, one cashier and one janitor, and hope to hire more in the future. Currently, the building is so small that there's not even any room for sufficient workspace behind a counter. So they're looking forward to the opportunity to employ more local residents as well and maintain their service to the community. This little gas station has become quite a landmark for the community. They use it every day. Hudson Gas has been here almost 40 years now. So I'm requesting respectfully that this first step be granted, that there be a favorable recommendation to reclassify the zone from the R1 to the C4. And I can show this picture to the community now. Are there any questions I can answer for you tonight?
You did sign in, and you did sign in?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Cohen, this is the new zoning plan, right?
Yeah, as Mr. Fox indicated, he did provide an updated or corrected zoning plan, and as he stated, the subject property does abut the C1 district as opposed to what was the drawing in your packet. As far as the site plan, as indicated, we received this tonight. Staff has not had any chance to look at the plan whatsoever in any true sense of evaluating it. So I would ask you to treat that more as an illustration as to what the development could be, rather than anything specific as to whether it is in compliance or not.
Since you just received information, would you, as a staff, feel better that this was tabled for a meeting, so you have an opportunity to look at the information?
No, because the specific question before the board is to determine whether or not the property should be changed from one classification to another. It is referenced in the staff report that it is the first step, and the other steps are, of course, all the technical reviews of the development, and because of the zoning ordinance, fueling stations are classified as conditional uses, so there will be a second formal public review of the specifics of the site plan, assuming that there are, for the conditional use permit, and at this point, we don't know if there are going to be any variances, and so those would be addressed at that appropriate time. And that's why I indicated that this is more of an illustration of the development. If you want to look at this case by ignoring the future development, you can choose to do that, because really the issue is that this station is been in existence for, since 1974, and was zoned properly, and then for whatever reason in 1981, which was before I got here, property was changed to R1. And is it appropriate for this property to be reclassified as the appropriate commercial zone? That's really the core question at this point in time.
And you feel comfortable proceeding at this time?
Yes, I do.
Okay. All right. Any questions?
I do.
Okay, Mr.
Can you please explain what this 800 square feet was used for?
They intend to have additional floor space for selling food, water.
No, I'm sorry. I'm sorry to interrupt you. What was it originally used as?
Oh, this original, the 1,000 square foot, was the gas station portion where people come in, pay for their gas, things like that. It's just been very small.
I understand that too.
I think he is adding additional 800 square feet. The building's going to be enlarged.
Oh, this is a new building that's going to be constructed?
Well, it's an addition to the existing building. As the Plata survey shows, there is an existing building, and that's
Okay.
the one that's been operating and built since 1974. And they're going to add on to the east of it by an additional 800 feet.
I'm sorry. I didn't understand the drawing. I apologize for that.
I'm sorry, it's the last minute, so I can understand that.
Thank you.
But it's the same type of operation. It's been there for 40 years. They're just expanding it so they can better service the community and also engage more employees.
Just out of curiosity, where on the property is the trash container
The trash container,
and the enclosure?
that's a good question. Let me ask. Where it is now? Yeah. Okay. Alex is informing me that currently it's at this corner.
Okay.
But of course, like, once we get through this first step, the idea
Okay.
is to work with the city to make sure we meet as many requirements as possible to limit the variances requested, which would include enclosing any unnecessary garbage, the lighting, the masonry wall I've discussed, things like that.
There's clearly a lot of regulatory reviews that have not been accomplished. I think what's important to get back to is the discussion of the use of the property. And just for clarity purposes, are there any convenience store items currently being sold out of the current building?
Yes, there are. There's,
So the intent is that, let's just say, for instance, that the expansion was not allowed. You're operating as a fueling station, convenience store combination, at least as we define it in our zoning ordinance.
yes, currently, but the issue is, like I mentioned, it's very tight for the employees, things like that.
That I understand that. So the trigger is that they are currently operating as a legal non-conforming use. The issue is, since they want to expand, they cannot expand a legal non-conforming use.
Correct.
So that is what is triggering the question for the rezoning, to at least get the property to be a legal conforming use. As to where the expansion can occur, that is still subject to further review and would clearly also be a BZA question.
Yes, that's why it's important that we get the recommendation today so we know that there will be an ordinance passed to reclassify it back to what it was so that we can invest the time and energy and the city's time and energy in making sure we can expand appropriately under all the regulations and ordinances.
Do you understand it now, Mr. Hardin, as far as what?
I do, thank you. But I still now have the question, what was the original 1,000 square feet used for?
The same thing, it's been used, but it was built in 1974, and you remember back then, people didn't use gas stations like stores like they do now. I mean, back then that was sufficient to service the public. They'd come in and pay for their gas. Maybe there was lottery tickets, a little bit of gum, cigarettes, whatever. Nowadays, as you know, a lot of these people have been accustomed to using gas stations as convenience stores, which has increased the volume, et cetera, et cetera. So the use is still the same that it's been. It's just become more intense, more voluminous over the years because the community has grown to know the site. And to my knowledge, as Alex mentioned, a lot of the community members came in and were happy to get the notice, happy to know that there's going to be additional service in the area.
Was it a service station?
Yes, it was built in 1974 as a
Was a
service
service
station,
station.
and it
It's
still
not.
has been. But what happened was,
Difference.
it was switched. When the new ordinance was passed years ago, for some reason, this property was delineated from GB, which was general commercial, which is what we're asking it to be rezoned to, but it was switched from that to R1. I don't know why. Mr. Poland doesn't know why. No one knows why. And that was quite a few years ago when that happened. And now that they've decided, hey, it's time to grow, that's when the principal for the company and their architect and everyone realized, wait a second, it's not even zoned what we need it to be zoned. So they engaged me to assist, to ask for your help to get it reclassified back. We believe maybe it was I don't know, a clerical error or whatever happened, but it's always been there for the purpose of being a gas station. This building's the same one.
So in other words, it started in 1974 in a R1,
No, it started in a GB, general business.
in basically what we would call now
It was
C4.
technically, yes,
The
technically it was,
C4, and
right.
then when they rezoned it, it went into a
residential R1.
residential, and you're requesting it to be rezoned back into the C4.
Right, it was general commercial, and it was put into residential, now we're asking it to be put back into general commercial. In the 70s, general commercial was delineated as GB, now it's delineated as C4. So we're just asking that it be put back, because it's been operating the same even under the name Hudson Gas all these years.
But in the beginning of time, it was a service station.
Yes,
Thank you.
And it's still a service station?
yes.
Even by any zoning that we had?
It's
Any
lawful
description?
non-conforming right now.
Any description, if we haven't changed the definition of a service station?
Well,
We
it's
have.
automobile fueling station is what it's known as now.
There's some terminology that has changed within the new ordinance versus the 1951 ordinance, because they just did call it gas stations, and they didn't address the convenience component of it, because that was assumed to be an accessory use component to a fueling station or a gas station. We just use the term now, fueling station, and within that section of the zoning ordinance that talks about fueling stations, we now use the term combination fueling station and convenience store, which is what the current convention is for all fueling stations. Gas stations used to have service areas. This particular one never had service areas. So it's operated practically as the same, it meets, by the way it's operated, in essence meets the current definition.
Okay, by changing it back to a C4, will that have any effect as far as the operation or the changes that would be needed in the service station part of the property? Like
I'm not sure.
Like as far as, spills, as far as canopies, like as far as anything else you would anticipate?
Obviously, the fueling station component was built to a different set of standards. So if this was a brand-new station going there, it would have to meet all the environmental questions. The city engineer and the Board of Works has a whole bunch of stacking requirements. And this station may or may not meet those at this point in time.
Because if it goes back to a C4, it still would not have to meet them. They'd still be considered the service station section grandfathered in?
In essence, yes. So what still has to occur with all the internal reviews is find out where the gaps still remain as to whether they are fully compliant with all the fueling station regulations, and that would have an effect on whether or not the BZA would grant the conditional use to allow for the expansion. But that's, that's an issue for the Board of Zoning Appeals.
Okay, so if then they still, if it is granted to C4, there is a chance that other requirements for the service station portion might have to be met.
Yes, yes. It will, the review will center on the request for the addition. That will trigger landscaping, the buffering, the parking requirements, and all of that's going to be brought into the discussion through the staff review as well as the BZA approval.
But not necessarily the environmental aspect of it.
Well, the one environmental aspect that will be brought in is it's the whole question of an oil-water separator, so that will be addressed, yes.
So does the entire property have to be brought up to C4?
It's not that the property is going to be brought up to C4. The question is whether or not it will meet the fueling station requirements. That's two separate things.
Good.
Go ahead with your could what?
Could you kind of help me understand the two separate things?
The zoning ordinance, the C4 obviously is a zoning classification, and within that zoning classification, you have a series of permitted uses, and you have a series of items that are considered to be conditional uses. So the changing of the zoning will, in essence, eliminate the zoning conflict, the zoning district conflict. Even though it may not meet all of the current requirements, it will, I guess, lessen the degree of nonconformity by at least eliminating the conflict of the zoning districts. So when we look at the specific request of expanding it, that's when we're going to look at setback requirements, parking requirements, the buffering, there's a whole question of window requirements. All those requirements are identified in what is referred to as Title 19 of the zoning ordinance, and those are, it's a section that identifies additional requirements for the specified uses within that title. So that's the part that really is more specific to the details and will be addressed by staff and then ultimately the Board of Zoning Appeals.
Thank you.
Can I ask another, probably, well, sort of related? If this building was the size they needed now, say this building that exists was 1,800 square feet, and there was no need for them to do anything as far as rezoning it, they could still operate it without any changes in the zoning or that. Say this building that they have, they have enough room right now to sell what they wanted to sell because of what the size of the building they have. So they would not necessarily have to rezone. They would have, they have the ability to sell additional items
Yeah, I mean, they're under the
and still keep it because they're still under non-conforming.
Yeah, they would be operating under the legal non-conforming use clause, as they are currently.
I was asking that for another 100. Sorry. All right, thank you. All right, any other questions, comments, discussions we would like to have at the present time? We will now open to the public for their comments, concerns, questions. Anyone in the public like to speak at this time? Anyone in the public? We will close this period of public expression and indicate there was no one in the public that would like to address CP-13-09. Any other questions or comments from the commissioners? We ready for the staff report?
Yeah, I'll summarize a little bit more than I did on the previous case, but we've already established that the history of this property, that it was built in 1974, it was legally built. Basically 7 years after it was built, the city changed the zoning ordinance and then changed the designation to R1. The property has been operating as it was constructed as a legal nonconforming use since that time. In the area, there is, obviously this is at the corner of two major streets, a residential district, R1, that's to the north and the east. Immediately to the west is the railroad track that runs through the property, or runs next to the property. There's property on the north side of the track that is currently vacant, that is zone C1. The property towards the intersection of Kennedy and 169th is zone C4. In reviewing the zoning ordinance, the state statute requires that the Plan Commission look at 5 criteria. One, the comprehensive plan question. We did the update in 2001 for the Hessville neighborhood. The plan encouraged generally all those that all of commercial properties should be improved in the area, asking for appropriate buffering from the residential areas. This parcel was identified in what was referred to as the Kennedy Avenue sub-area within that plan. It's on the periphery of that area and was identified as being that it should be commercial. Current conditions, the property is a fueling station. It probably needs some improvements. It does not have the adequate buffers. The station is on a major east-west arterial street, and again, abutting that residential area. Most desirable use of the property, again, it's been continually used as a station since '74, with not really many significant improvements in that time frame. Fueling stations have changed to be more fueling station and convenience stores, and this station is located at a 4-way stop, those are some of the criteria that we would use as to if we were locating a fueling station as if there was nothing there. And so it is really, it's not unreasonable for this use to continue at this location. Property values is always a question. Improving an existing building always helps to raise the property values, but we always have the concern about how commercial abuts residential, and the best that we have available is to develop appropriate buffering in order to minimize any of the negative impacts of commercial adjacent to residential. Responsible growth and development, we're kind of looking at, in some respects, and not to be too flippant, but the colors on the map. And if you're going to expand a commercial zone, you really want to make sure that it's adjacent to an existing commercial zone. In this particular case, it literally abuts an S1, which is the railroad track is in an S1, but on the other side of the railroad track is commercial property, either C1 or C4, depending upon the specific lot. So this is, in some respects, a reasonable expansion of the commercial area. So the staff does recommend the rezoning because it is the first step in bringing the non-conforming use into compliance with zoning. And the comprehensive plan indicates that this property is commercial in use and the zoning should match the use. Staff recommends that the Plan Commission send the petition to rezone to the City Council with a favorable recommendation. If the Plan Commission agrees with the recommendation, staff requests that this report be adopted by the Plan Commission as preliminary findings of fact. And then again, just to note for the record, that the conditional use permit will be required in order to make the specific improvements should the council agree to the rezoning.
Any questions in regard to the staff report? Do we have a motion to accept the staff report into findings of fact?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call vote.
Ann Herbert,
Yes.
Kathleen Kathleen Hill,
Yes?
William Hutton,
Yes.
Michael Pinker,
Yes.
Kim White,
Yes.
Thomas White,
Yes.
6 ayes, 0 nays, motion passed.
Then we need a motion for CP 1309 as to how we would like to send it to the city council.
I'd move we send it to the city council with a favorable recommendation.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Ann Herbert,
Yes?
Kathleen Hill,
Yes?
William Hutton,
Yes.
Michael Pinker,
Yes.
Kim White,
Yes.
Thomas White,
Yes.
6 ayes, 0 nays, motion passed.
Anything else needed at this time, Mr. Poland?
No, not at this time.
Thank you. Good luck. Any correspondence?
No correspondence.
Any commissioners' comments? Any staff comments?
Just to, at the last meeting, I talked about this Southern Shores Plan and this meetings with the City of Whiting. I have not been able to pin them down on some dates, so that's still out there. We had originally thought about having that for the October Plan Commission meeting, and I am not sure if that is still going to occur. I'll just, keep you advised as the events change. So at this point, I do not know if we are going to have an October Plan Commission meeting, but we'll let you know as soon as possible.
Any public comments? Have a motion to adjourn?
Second. Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye.